last week, the Capital Club held a very interesting event. It was an economic outlook looking at 2021 and what 2021 has to offer the world and the region in particular. And it was a very interesting conversation. It brought together folks from government, folks from private sector, and some thought leaders to talk about the economic outlook. And the bottom line is something that's not very surprising. 2020 was a very difficult year. 2020 also brought together a lot of, one of the guests actually kept talking about how 2020 was almost a year of innovation because many things came out and governments and private sector actors had to be very creative in how they sort of plan for the future. Now, as you and I have spoken, you've come with a concept called Afro-Eurabia. And so within the context of innovation and looking back at what happened in 2020, the context of what we think is going to happen this year, what do you mean when you talk about Afro-Eurabia? And specifically, what does it have to do with business in the region and globally?
Isaac, I came with this concept Afro-Eurabia because I myself, I have to struggle every day to come out with an analytical framework that allows me to understand and predict geopolitical dynamics in the wider regions. And for me, Afro-Eurabia summarized very well in one breath the fact that today we have the dynamics in the North Africa, the Sahel region, the Horn of Africa, the Gulf, the Middle East, up to Iran, and including also the Eastern Mediterranean area and much part of Southern Europe as one overarching dynamic. Of course, we have different dynamics in each country and each sub-regions, but when you see it politically today, this is part of one supercontinent, and you cannot understand what's happening in one country if you don't look at these countries all around. And this works very well when it comes to political analysis. This is one supercontinent, if you look at analytically speaking. But I think what I want to do now is to also try to use this analytical framework to look at geoeconomic space and what does it mean for business in the regions. And the fact is that today, if you're a business and you're looking at the risk of your business in this area, but also the opportunity, you have to look at what are your political risk, and the political risk comes together into what is this, I would say, a bit claustrophobic sometimes area where each crisis is interconnected to the other, and each opportunity as it comes, economic or political, open market, open space, that then company can fill. That is my concept for Afro-Eurabia.
So let me ask you, just to follow on to that, it sounds like what you're describing is this idea of you are strong as your weakest link. But interestingly enough, I think when we talk about geopolitics, we talk about business, whatever, the interconnectedness never seems to go beyond the specific region. For instance, we talk about the EU as a polity, and so the EU is very connected, and that's great. You look at Africa. Africa is now going through this Africa Union, AFCFTA. In the Gulf, you have the GCC. But now what you're suggesting is saying somehow all these elements of regionalization, what have you, actually can form, as a business, you can form an analysis or a narrative around defining your risk based on interconnecting all these three things. Is that what you're suggesting?
It's correct. You have European dynamics within Europe and the EU building foreign policy. You have an African Union, which is very increasingly assertive in handling peace and security in Africa, but it's also working to create a trade space among countries and facilitate inter-country trade, which has been missing so far in Africa. And then you have the Gulf country as GCC, but then you cannot see this in isolation with each other. And in effect, you have many members of the African Unions, for instance, today are members of the League of Arab States. You have both Christian majority countries and Muslim majority countries. And Muslim majority countries are inevitably, impacted and affected also by the dynamics and the politics of the Arab world, and vice versa as well. And you have the role of Turkey when it comes to the conflict in Libya. You have the normalizations of relations between Israel and several Arab countries in recent months. All this shift and change the political scape. Some elements increase opportunities, other increase risks. And if you are in politics, you look at this, but if you are in business, sometimes there is the risk to be transactional. And if you are too much bilateral, transactional, or sectorial, I think that you risk to be at a certain time on the losing end. But if you have quite of a broad geopolitical picture and geoeconomic picture, then you find yourself where are your space and how you diminish risk and how you increase profits.